Until one day, I saw a girl. She was staring at Dane Crawford with a look of quiet devotion. She looked so familiar. My feet moved on their own. I walked up to her. "Hey," I said. "Haven't we met before? Maybe in a past life?" She glared at me and ran away. And slowly, bit by bit, the memories came flooding back. A joy so fierce it felt like it would tear me apart bloomed in my chest. I felt like I could fly. "My girl. I found you." My sister had just returned to the country when my husband slapped a divorce agreement on the table. He said our marriage was over. The pain was like a knife twisting in my heart. I signed it through the agony. Then, carrying his child, I married his deadliest rival. For years later, when he saw the miniature version of himself standing beside me, calling his rival Dad, his eyes turned crimson with regret. Two pink lines stared back at me from the pregnancy test. But before I could even process the wave of joy, Dane Crawford tossed a file onto the marble countertop in front of me. "Shay, let's get a divorce. Sign this, and I'll give you an extra $2 million. I looked at the man standing before me, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his handsome face a mask of cold indifference, and I couldn't bring myself to nod. Dane's patience wore thin. We signed an agreement when we got married. The contract was for 3 years. It's up in a month. If you don't agree now, the marriage will dissolve automatically then. But if that happens, you won't get a single cent of the extra $2 million. I took a deep, shaky breath. "Dane, what if I told you I'm pregnant?" I admit it. It was pathetic. Even at this moment, I was trying to use a child to make him stay. The Crawford family was small, with few heirs. For the sake of a child, maybe, just maybe, he would give up on the divorce. But his next words plunged me into an icy abyss. "I had a vasectomy. That baby can't be mine." My mouth fell open, but no sound came out. Dane was the only man I had ever been with. If this child wasn't his, whose could it possibly be? But I knew, when someone refuses to believe you, any explanation is just wasted breath. Dane left. I stared at the marriage dissolution agreement, my mind blank. The story of our marriage was a cliché drenched in heartache. 3 years ago, it was my older sister, Lorna, who was supposed to marry Dane. But just before the wedding, she fled the country to chase after her one true love. To save the multi-billion-dollar merger between our families, the Collins family made me take her place. To save face, the Crawford family agreed. I had been secretly in love with Dane for 7 years. I didn't refuse. So, the only unwilling party in this entire arrangement was Dane himself. I don't know what other people's wedding nights are like. On mine, Dane threw a contract at me. It stipulated a 3-year term, after which our marriage would end, whether I agreed or not. Back then, I was devastated, but I hadn't given up hope. I believed that if I just loved him hard enough, I could eventually melt his frozen heart. Lorna was gone. I was the one by his side. One day, he would have to see me. For 3 years, I took care of him with meticulous devotion. He had chronic GERD, so I spent countless hours researching and perfecting recipes for him. He suffered from migraines and insomnia, so I took professional courses in somatic therapy and aromatherapy to help him sleep. Looking back, I was so naive, so foolish. Who falls in love with their live-in caregiver? It was over. Our time together was nothing but mutual torture. My hand trembled as I reached for a pen, ready to sign my heart away. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. "Shay, honey, your sister is back. Her flight lands this afternoon. Come back for dinner tonight, and bring Dane. Let's have a proper family reunion." Her voice was bright with a joy I hadn't heard in years. I opened my mouth, my own voice raspy. "Why is she back so suddenly?" My mother sighed dramatically. I told her that European boy was no good. But she insisted on marrying him. And just as I predicted, he showed his true colors right after the wedding. Out all night, every night. He even brought other women home. She was pregnant, and he didn't care. He made her miscarry. But she's decided to come back, which means she's seen the light. It's all for the best. Oh, and Shay, when you see her later, don't bring up the past. We don't want to upset her. Her voice droned on, a meaningless hum in my ear. And in that moment, one thing became brutally clear. Why Dane was in such a hurry to divorce me. Lorna was bad. In that instant, my head swam, and a strange, chilling thought pierced through the fog of my grief. It felt as if my entire life was a badly written novel, and the plot was laid bare before me. Lorna was the heroine. And I was just the disposable supporting character, the foolish girl who loved the male lead, married him by a twist of fate, only to gracefully step aside the moment the true heroine returned. In this story, Lorna would later discover she couldn't have children. And I, the saintly fool, would give them my own child. I would watch them live happily ever after as a perfect family of 3, and I would smile, blessing them from the shadows. A jolt went through me. Was I losing my mind? But in that same second, something inside me snapped. The desperate, aching love I had for Dane just vanished. I put the pen down. I wasn't signing anything. Why should I make way for them the second she comes back? Why should I facilitate their happily ever after? Before this marriage ends, I'm going to make them miserable. I'm going to cause them pain. I refuse to be the tragic side character. If I'm going to be a supporting character, I'll be the villain of this story. I took a cab to the Collins family estate. Dane arrived with Lorna. She looked more worn than she had 3 years ago, the vibrant spark in her eyes dimmed, but she was still the center of the universe. The moment she walked in, Mom and Dad swarmed her, fussing over her, their voices dripping with concern. A sudden downpour had just passed. Lorna's clothes were perfectly dry. The sleeve of Dane's jacket, however, was soaked. I could picture it perfectly, Dane holding the umbrella entirely over her, letting the rain drench him. When I was with Dane, he always walked ahead, and I always trailed behind. Some people are just different. I swallowed the lump of bitterness in my throat, walked straight to Dane's side, and wrapped my arm possessively around his. Honey, you're all wet, I said, my voice thick with exaggerated concern. Lorna's gaze flickered towards us, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Dane tried to pull his arm away, but I clung on tight. You'll catch a cold like this, I cooed, loud enough for everyone to hear. You're the pillar of your company, you can't afford to get sick. Let me take you upstairs to change. I saw a vein pulse in his temple. He was fighting for control. But in front of my family, he had to maintain the illusion of a husband. He let me lead him upstairs. The second the bedroom door clicked shut, he ripped his arm from my grasp. Don't touch me. You're my husband. What's wrong with me holding your arm? Dane took a deep breath, his jaw tight. Did you sign the agreement? No. I'm pregnant. I told you, I had a vasectomy. Are you sure the doctor who did it was legitimate? Or was he a quack? You've been the only man in my life for the past 3 years, Dane. You're not getting out of this, I said, my voice as cold as ice. His face turned ashen with fury. Shay, what's happened to you? For 3 years, I had been the perfect, docile wife in his eyes. Gentle, considerate, obedient. He had never seen me like this, sharp, venomous, and ready for a fight. This was the real me, the gentle wife was just a mask. I've always been the type to repay every wound in kind. If I couldn't have his heart, I would at least leave him bleeding. It was the only way to justify the years of humiliation and pain. I crossed my arms, looking him up and down. What's wrong with me? At least I'm not the kind of guy who screws you and can't even remember your name by morning. Dane was so enraged he was speechless. Downstairs, I switched back to the sweet, doting wife. I sat right next to Dane, leaning against him playfully. Honey, I want some of that fish, but it's too far. Can you get it for me? A moment later. Darling, my water glass is empty. Could you refill it, please? I kept him busy the entire meal, a personal servant at my beck and call. The faces of both Dane and Lorna grew darker and darker. Lorna was probably realizing, with a harsh jolt, that the boy who used to follow her around like a shadow was now someone else's husband. Halfway through dinner, she excused herself, claiming she was tired, and went upstairs. Dane, unable to stand it a second longer, escaped to the bathroom. Shay, my mother hissed, her voice low and sharp. Your sister just went through a breakup. You flaunting your relationship with Dane like that is just cruel. You're upsetting her. I almost laughed out loud. This family. It always revolved around Lorna. When Lorna ran away, they pushed me into a marriage to save themselves, never once asking if I was okay. Now Lorna was back, and all they could see was her, completely blind to how inappropriate it was for my husband to be fawning over her. Lorna was the main character of this world. With her here, I would always be an insignificant extra. No one cared about me. No one ever had. I should have been used to it by now. I lifted my chin, blinking back the sting in my eyes, and put on a pathetic, vulnerable expression. Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant. That's why I've been a little needy. As the words left my mouth, I heard the sharp sound of shattering glass. I looked up. Lorna stood at the top of the stairs, her hands empty, her face a mask of pure shock. At the same moment, Dane burst out of the bathroom, grabbed my arm, and dragged me out of the house without another word. The moment we were back in our penthouse, Dane slammed the door and spun me around, his eyes blazing with a terrifying fury. I am pregnant, Dane. Am I not allowed to tell my own family? I shot back, meeting his murderous glare without flinching. He looked like he wanted to strangle me. Watching the shock on Lorna's face and the rage twisting Dane's, a strange, dark satisfaction bloomed in my chest. Maybe I really did have a talent for being the villain. The next morning, I slept until the sun was high in the sky. I glanced at the clock, 8 a.m. As I walked out of the bedroom, I saw Dane sitting on the living room sofa, his face grim. Dane was a man of impeccable, almost infuriating, routine. His coffee had to be a specific roast, brewed at a precise temperature. For years, I had been the one to prepare his breakfast and brew that perfect cup of coffee. But not anymore. I was done playing maid. Sleeping in felt incredible. Hungry? I asked casually. He didn't answer, but his stomach let out an embarrassing growl. I'll order something, I said, pulling out my phone. Dane stared at me in utter disbelief. By the time the delivery driver arrived, Dane had stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I couldn't help but give myself a mental high five. Good thing I didn't order anything for him. That afternoon, while I was in the middle of a spa treatment, I got a call from Dane's secretary, Miss Potts. Mrs. Crawford, she said, her voice laced with anxiety, Mr. Crawford hasn't eaten anything all day. He said the food from the company cafeteria isn't to his liking. Right. For years, I had packed his lunch, too. I had spoiled his palate completely. Now, it seemed, nothing was edible to him unless I made it. Don't worry, Miss Potts, I said calmly. When he gets hungry enough, he'll eat. Later that evening, a notification popped up on my phone. It was an image, sent by Lorna. The man in the photo, with his high-bridged nose and impeccably sharp profile, was unmistakably Dane. A second later, the photo was retracted. Sorry, a new message from her read. Sent that by mistake. I didn't bother to reply. TSK. My sister. She was used to getting whatever she wanted just by crooking a finger. Now she was resorting to these kinds of cheap tricks. The saint had turned into a snake. I wasn't sad. On the contrary, I was delighted. In the photo, sitting right in front of Dane, was a massive, bubbling pot of what looked like Nashville hot chicken stew, glistening with red chili oil. Dane's stomach was a wreck. He had barely eaten breakfast or lunch. Eating that inferno in a bowl for dinner was basically a suicide mission for his digestive system. He couldn't handle spicy food. Lorna loved it. He was indulging her, of course. And he would pay the price. I slept like a baby that night. Sure enough, when I woke up, my phone was littered with dozens of missed calls. I opened my messages. They were all from a frantic Miss Potts. Mrs. Crawford, Mr. Crawford has been hospitalized. I took my time getting out of bed. I made myself some homemade chicken and rice soup. After a leisurely breakfast, I poured the leftovers into a thermos and headed to the hospital. Dane was in a private luxury suite. As I approached the door, I saw him sitting up in bed, his face pale and drawn. He kept glancing towards the doorway, as if expecting someone. When he saw me, his expression instantly soured, and he turned his head away. I walked in. Mrs. Crawford, you're here. Miss Potts rushed over, taking the thermos from my hands. Mr. Crawford has been waiting for you all morning. He'll be so relieved. Dane was definitely waiting for someone, but that someone wasn't me. This soup you made smells incredible, Mrs. Crawford. Mr. Crawford is so lucky. A faint hint of color returned to Dane's pale cheeks. It was just leftovers from my breakfast, I said nonchalantly. I figured I'd bring it here instead of throwing it out. Even the ever-diplomatic Miss Potts was stunned into silence. Dane's face turned a shade of livid gray. Get out, he choked out, each word a shard of glass tearing at his throat. I enjoyed the look on his face for a moment longer. Seeing him miserable made me feel so much better. I turned and walked out of the room. And ran right into someone standing just outside the door. He was tall, with a face that could rival Dane's any day of the week. I knew him. Dane's mortal enemy, Kieran Sullivan. He looked like a scholar, but everyone knew he was a silver-tongued devil. Anything Dane liked, Kieran had to have. Kieran had even briefly played the part of Lorna's devoted admirer years ago. Later, after I became Mrs. Crawford, he had tried to hit on me a few times. Sometimes I even wondered if Kieran was secretly in love with Dane. I glared at him. Eavesdropping? Kieran leaned against the wall, a lazy, unrepentant grin on his face. I wouldn't call it eavesdropping. More like, openly appreciating a masterpiece. That was brilliant, Shay. Seeing that arrogant bastard put in his place? Cathartic. I stared at him, my face blank. Don't call me Shay. And get lost. Why so feisty all of a sudden, he purred, his charming eyes holding a strange, deep look. Though I have to admit, he added, his voice dropping to a low murmur, this is the you I remember. His words made no sense. I dismissed it as his usual brand of sleazy charm and brought my heel down hard on his expensive Italian leather shoe. I heard him hiss in pain, and I walked away, satisfied. I was going to divorce Dane, of course, and I was going to take that extra $2 million. I was only dragging this out to torture him and Lorna. But the child, the baby growing inside me. I hesitated for days, but finally, I made a decision. I had to let it go. I made an appointment and went to the hospital. After a series of tests, I sat in the doctor's office. The doctor looked over my results, her expression serious. Shay, given your specific physical condition, I cannot recommend terminating this pregnancy. I was stunned. It was just like in that strange dream, that novel I had imagined. In the story, the main character's attempt to have an abortion was stopped by her doctor for the exact same reason. What would happen if I insisted? You would be putting your life at risk. I was already on the fence, already feeling the primal connection to the life inside me. The doctor's words sealed it. I was keeping this baby. But I wouldn't be giving him away to Dane and Lorna, like the tragic heroine in the story. I was going to raise this child alone. I walked out of the doctor's office and saw him again. Kieran. He glanced at me, then at the obstetrics sign on the door. A slow, deliberate smile spread across his face. Shay, you're pregnant, he said, his voice a theatrical whisper. You're pregnant and you didn't tell me? You should have let me come with you. I know I'm a busy man, but I would always make time for you and our baby. His words were laced with a sweet, poisonous ambiguity, loud enough for anyone in the hallway to hear. I stomped on his foot again, grinding my heel in for good measure. Watching his handsome face twist in pain, I felt a surge of satisfaction and walked away. My good mood was short-lived. Maybe I was too pleased with myself for tormenting Kieran. I wasn't watching where I was going, and I missed a step, tumbling down a short flight of stairs. My first instinct was to curl up, to shield my stomach. In the blur of the fall, I saw a figure lunging towards me. Then I was being lifted into strong arms. Doctor. Somebody get a doctor, now. It sounded like Kieran's voice. But why did it sound so tense? So full of panic? That was my last coherent thought before the world went black. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was Kieran sitting by my bedside. He was perched on a low stool, his long legs crammed uncomfortably in the small space. He saw my eyes flutter open, and his own charming eyes narrowed. Well, look who's awake. Shay, did you forget to install the part of your brain that handles walking? Tripping over your own feet? He was mocking me without mercy. I was sure of it now. The panicked, desperate voice I'd heard before I passed out, it must have been a hallucination. Then, his entire demeanor shifted. Shay, you look so pale. Does it hurt somewhere? Let me kiss it better. Before he could lean in, another figure inserted himself between us. Dane grabbed Kieran's arm, his face a thundercloud of rage. Sullivan. This is my wife, Dane gritted out, his voice a low growl. He looked like he wanted to tear Kieran apart with his bare hands. Oh, Shay has a husband? Kieran replied, not backing down an inch. Funny. She came to her OBGYN appointment all alone. I just assumed her husband was dead. Dane's jaw clenched. He stared daggers at Kieran. Kieran met his gaze, completely unafraid. Get out, Dane repeated. TSK Dane, are you a broken record? Is that the only word you know? Kieran taunted him relentlessly. He pushed Dane right to the edge of his control, then, with a final, smug smirk, he sauntered out of the room. My mood, surprisingly, lifted. Kieran was an ass. But when he was tormenting Dane, he was a rather lovable ass. Dane's furious gaze suddenly snapped to me. I touched my face and realized I was smiling. He's only nice to you because you're my wife, Dane said, his voice dripping with venom. Everything I have, he wants to take. Don't flatter yourself. And in that moment, a truly wicked idea popped into my head. An idea that would surely drive Dane insane. I arranged my face into an expression of tortured conflict. Oh, no. What am I going to do? I sighed dramatically. I think I'm falling in love with Kieran. Dane, I said, looking him straight in the eye. I'll sign the divorce papers as soon as we get home. His face went from furious to utterly apoplectic. When we got back to the penthouse, I started looking for the dissolution agreement. I couldn't find it anywhere. I called Dane. Where's the agreement? There was a pause on the other end. I don't know, he finally said. I had been with him for 3 years. I knew his tells. He was lying. He had hidden it. The man who had been desperate for me to sign was now hiding the papers to stop me. It seemed his precious Lorna wasn't worth losing face over. He couldn't stand the thought of his wife leaving him for his rival. It didn't matter. He wouldn't be able to hold out for long. The next few days, I lived my best life. I ate what I wanted, slept as much as I wanted, and started planning for my future after the divorce. A small town, maybe. A little shop. A quiet life. Then, my mother called, demanding I come home immediately. When I arrived, my father, my mother, and Lorna were all sitting in the living room, their faces grim and serious. The moment she saw me, my mother rushed over and took my hand. Shay, honey, I know you haven't been happy these past few years with Dane. He hasn't treated you well. He's treated you like a maid. She looked at me with such pity. A bitter laugh almost escaped my lips. So she knew. She had known all along. I used to think she just didn't care enough to notice. Just like when we were kids. Lorna would get a tiny scrape, and they would rush her to the emergency room. I could be burning up with a fever all night, and no one would even check on me, but this was worse. She knew. She just didn't care. We were both her daughters, but Lorna was her treasure, and I was just baggage. Shay, maybe you should just get the divorce. She wasn't suggesting this for my sake, of course. It was for. My eyes drifted to Lorna. He never loved you, Shay. Why torture each other? Lorna said, her voice smooth as silk. I met her gaze. Dane loves you, sister. So you're saying I should divorce him, so he can marry you? Lorna didn't answer, but her silence was a confirmation. I looked at my parents. It was clear this was their plan all along. When you have no expectations, you can't be disappointed. I placed a hand on my belly. What about my baby? Oh, stop pretending, Shay, Lorna snapped, her mask of sympathy falling away. That baby isn't Dane's. He's just being polite by not exposing you. Don't push your luck. There it was. Lorna was done playing games. $500,000, I said quietly. Lorna blinked. What? Give me $500,000, and I'll divorce Dane. My parents adored Lorna. The family assets were all unofficially hers. $500,000 was nothing to her, and I needed every penny I could get to raise this child on my own. The thought of Dane finding out he'd been sold for $500,000 was just the cherry on top. A win-win. Lorna gritted her teeth and nodded. Then let's call Dane over. Lorna made the call. Dane arrived quickly. Dane, where's the agreement? I asked. He glared at me, his voice a low hiss. Are you that desperate to be with Sullivan? I am. I can't wait. And even if I could, the baby can't. Let's get this over with, Dane. He pressed his lips into a thin line, clearly unwilling to go through with it. Dane, Lorna said softly. If this is what Shay wants, just let her go. That was all it took. He called his secretary. The dissolution agreement arrived shortly after. I signed my name with a flourish. Remember this, Dane. I'm the one who's leaving you. And don't forget to wire the money. I put the pen down and walked out without a backward glance. Goodbye, Dane. I walked aimlessly down the street, feeling numb. I thought I would be relieved. I thought I'd feel nothing. But there was a hollow space in my chest where my heart used to be. It was empty. A cold wind blew right through it. My love for Dane was long dead. But today, I had lost more than just a husband. I had lost my family. Not that they were ever really my family. They never cared about me. I was just finally facing the truth. No one loved me. No one cared about me. I was just an insignificant extra in someone else's story. Suddenly, a sleek black Maybach pulled up beside me. The door opened, and a long leg emerged. It was him. Kieran Sullivan. The beautifully dressed devil. He got out and blocked my path. Divorced? I stared at him. How did he know so fast? Lorna told me. Now there's nothing standing between us, Shay, he said, his voice dripping with faux sincerity. I rolled my eyes. You have got to be kidding me. You don't need to go this far just to get back at Dane. I'm pregnant, in case you forgot. Are you really that eager to play daddy? He stroked his chin thoughtfully. The thought of Dane Crawford's son calling me Dad, it's exquisitely satisfying. Okay, that settles it. He's insane. I tried to walk around him. He followed me, listing all the wonderful benefits of marrying him. I was completely speechless. But the hollow ache in my chest, it had started to fade. I left the city I had lived in for over 20 years. I flew thousands of miles away, to a small town where no one knew my name. New people, new scenery, a new beginning. But the moment I stepped out of the airport, I saw a familiar figure. Kieran stood there, a brilliant smile on his face. What a coincidence, Shay. Are you following me? I was speechless. He had stolen my line. I took a cab to the house I had bought online, sight unseen. As I was about to unlock my front door, the door directly opposite mine opened. Kieran's handsome, infuriating face appeared. His expression was one of comical shock. Shay, you live across the hall from me? And you say you're not stalking me? If you have a crush on me, just say so. I stepped inside and slammed the door shut. The loud bang was my only reply. The house was fully furnished and had been cleaned by a service before I arrived. I did some light unpacking. As I sat down, my phone pinged. I picked it up, but the call ended before I could answer. It was Dane's number. A wrong number? I didn't care. I blocked him. A few moments later, another unknown number called. Mrs. Crawford? This is a friend of Dane's. He's had a bit too much to drink. Could you come and pick him up? In the past, whenever Dane drank too much at a business function, I would go and get him, no matter how far or how late. But now, Dane and I are divorced. You should call his secretary. I hung up and added that number to my block list as well. The block list was growing. And that was just the beginning. Over the next few days, I got calls from everyone in Dane's circle. Dane was in the hospital with stomach pains. Dane had a cold. The most ridiculous one was a call claiming Dane missed me so much he was crying. What was wrong with these people? I had given him exactly what he wanted. I had set him free to be with Lorna. I suspected they were just trying to torment me. So I changed my number and created a new social media profile. Finally, I had some peace and quiet. I opened a small flower shop on the ground floor of my building. Welcome, I said, looking up as the bell on the door chimed. My face fell. Kieran, dressed in a sharp suit and his signature gold-rimmed glasses, looked every bit the sophisticated gentleman. He picked out a bouquet of roses. $99, I said flatly. He paid with his phone and then held the flowers out to me. I ignored him. He took the hint and placed them in a vase on the counter. He was like a ghost I couldn't shake. He was really, truly committed to this bizarre quest of becoming a father to Dane Crawford's son. What a lunatic. No wonder he was the main villain in my story. He deserved the ending he got, bankrupt and picking up trash on the street. At first, I told him to get lost. Eventually, I just gave up. I was numb to it. Let him do whatever he wanted. Shay, your flower delivery is here, the wholesaler shouted from the curb. I hurried outside to help unload. Suddenly, I heard the screech of tires. A truck was careening out of control, heading straight for me. My mind went completely blank. Then, a body slammed into mine, tackling me to the ground. It took me a moment to register what had happened. It was Kieran. He was always so vain, so impeccably dressed even just to take out the trash. Now, his gold-rimmed glasses were gone, his hair was a mess, and he looked utterly disheveled. But for the first time, he felt close. Real. Kieran, get up. Are you hurt? I asked, my voice trembling. I'm not as clumsy as you are. I have a black belt in Taekwondo. You think a little truck can take me down? He rolled off me and tried to sit up, but his face twisted in a grimace of pain. Shit. I think my leg's broken. I immediately called for an ambulance. While we waited, I looked at his leg, bent at an unnatural angle. I felt helpless, my eyes burning with tears. It's just a scratch. I'm not gonna die, he said, trying to sound nonchalant. Suddenly, his own expression shifted to one of panic. Hey, why are you crying? Shay, don't cry, seriously, it's nothing. Look, I'll show you, I can stand up right now. He actually tried to get up. I pushed him back down. If you move, I'll start wailing. He froze instantly. At the hospital, the doctors treated Kieran's injuries and ran a full set of tests. Thankfully, it was just his leg. It wasn't even a severe fracture. A minor surgery and 3 months of rest, and he'd be fine. I stayed with him through the surgery. I hired a private nurse for him. And every day, I went to the hospital to bring him food. The man who had been trying to stand up on a broken leg was now lying in bed, putting on a full, damsel in distress performance. Shay, I'm thirsty. Shay, my hands hurt. You have to feed me. Shay, my shoulders are so sore. Can you give me a massage? I ignored him. His handsome face immediately crumpled. My leg hurt so much, he whined. I wonder who I injured it for. I sighed, sat down on the edge of his bed, and started rubbing his shoulders. That's when Dane walked in. He stood in the doorway and knocked loudly, a sharp, angry rap. I looked up and saw his face, twisted into a mask of pure fury. I hadn't seen him in a while. He looked haggard, older. Without a word, he strode over and grabbed my arm, pulling me towards the door. Crawford, get your filthy hands off my girlfriend. Kieran roared from the bed. Let her go, or I swear to God, I'll kill you. He was actually trying to get out of bed, his injured leg flailing. Stay put, I warned him. If you get out of that bed, you're not getting any dinner. I glared at him. I'll just be a minute. I'll be right back. Kieran reluctantly lay back down. Dane's face grew even darker. He took 2 deep, shuddering breaths, trying to contain his rage. We stepped out into the hallway. I looked at him. Are you here to give me an invitation to your wedding with Lorna? Because I'm not interested in attending my ex's wedding. Shay, I'm not marrying Lorna, Dane interrupted, his voice hoarse. Then what do you want? He didn't answer. I was losing my patience. I turned to go back into the room. Shay, let's get back together, he finally blurted out. These past few months, without you, I think about you all the time. I dream about you. I've realized. I love you. It was only after you left that I understood what was in my own heart. He sounded almost pathetic. Why didn't you answer my calls? I had Miss Potts call you, but you wouldn't pick up. For a man as proud as Dane, saying those words must have taken every ounce of his courage. But I felt no sympathy. Only a cold, bitter amusement. A love that arrives too late is worth less than dirt. I'm sorry, I don't love you anymore. And as you can see, I have someone new in my life now. Please don't disturb us. He grew desperate. Shay, don't trust him. He doesn't love you. He's just doing this to get back at me. I let out a short, sharp laugh. The last time I was sick, I called you, and you said you had to work late. A few days ago, when I was almost hit by a truck, Kieran threw himself in front of me without a second thought. Do you really think you have the right to tell me who loves me and who doesn't? Dane stood there, stunned into silence. We're divorced, Dane. There's no going back. Go find your Lorna. I turned and walked back into the hospital room. Dane just stood there in the hallway. He looked like a lost, abandoned child. But I felt not a shred of pity. Everyone has to take responsibility for their own choices. He was 26, not 6. No one was going to wait for him forever. No one was going to tolerate his selfishness indefinitely. What's lost is lost. I walked back into the room and was immediately greeted by Kieran's dramatic wailing. Shay, my leg hurts so bad. Come kiss it and make it better. I grabbed his ear and twisted. Ow. I meant kiss my cheek. Why are you kissing my mouth? We're in public. A week later, Kieran was discharged. I hired a caregiver to look after him for the next 3 months. And I visited him often. 3 months passed. According to the doctor, he should have been able to walk freely by then, but his recovery was suspiciously slow. The moment his foot touched the ground, he would howl in agony. Something wasn't right. He was the type who looked lean in clothes but was ripped underneath. I had accidentally walked in on him once. He had an 8-pack. He clearly worked out a lot. Someone with that kind of physique, how could he not be healed after 3 months? Shay, my leg is so sore. Come and massage it for me, he said, his daily refrain. This time, I clutched my stomach and doubled over. Kieran shot up from the couch like a rocket. Shay, what's wrong? Is it the baby? I'm taking you to the hospital. I just stared at him, my face a perfect blank. He froze, realizing his cover was blown. He immediately switched to a sheepish, charming grin. Wow, my leg is suddenly all better. Is this the power of love? I reached out and grabbed his ear. Kieran was with me for every checkup, every ultrasound. He was there when I gave birth. The day our son was born, he hovered around the baby, clumsy and cautious and completely mesmerized. Hey there, little guy. Say, Dada. I was a new mom, and I was clueless. Kieran learned right alongside me. Within a few days, he was a diaper-changing pro. When the baby was 1 year old, the first word he learned was mama. The second was Dada. Kieran was ecstatic for the entire day. I had never seen anyone so thrilled to be a father to someone else's child. When our son was 2, Kieran and I officially started dating. When he was 3, we got married, and he was our ring bearer. The wedding was small and private, just a few close friends and family. Kieran slipped the ring onto my finger. I glanced out at our guests and thought I saw a familiar figure lingering in the back. I blinked, and he was gone. I turned back to Kieran and smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes. I was so lucky. I had found someone who truly loved me. After the ceremony, I stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. In a quiet corner of the garden, I saw 2 figures. One large, one small. My heart tightened. I walked over. Dane was holding out a piece of candy to the little boy. The boy's features were still soft and undefined, but he was the spitting image of Dane. A miniature version of the man I once loved. My son didn't take the candy. He looked up at the stranger and said, in his sweet, piping voice, my mommy and daddy said I'm not allowed to take candy from strangers. Dane's hand froze in midair. I saw his eyes glisten, turning red around the rims. I walked over and took my son's hand. Kieran joined us a moment later. I passed our son to him. Go play with daddy for a minute. Kieran looked at me, then at Dane, his eyes wary. I gave him a reassuring look. He nodded and led our son away. Shay? In the 4 years since I had last seen him, Dane had aged a decade. He never married Lorna. She went back to Europe, got back together with her ex-husband. They were still torturing each other. Dane never remarried. I heard he started drinking heavily, that his life was a wreck. His business had taken a nosedive. The butterfly effect, I guess. I had refused to be the saintly side character, and the whole story had changed. That boy? Dane's voice was desperate, cracking. It doesn't matter anymore, Dane. Don't come looking for me again. If you do, I'll disappear, and you'll never find me. I turned my back on him and walked away. Behind me, I heard a choked, guttural sob. I didn't look back. I walked, one step at a time, towards the man I loved. I remember the first time I met Kieran. It was shortly after my wedding to Dane. He stopped me in the hallway of some corporate building. Hey, he'd said with that infuriatingly charming grin. Haven't we met before? Maybe in a past life? I had thought it was the cheesiest, most ridiculous pickup line I had ever heard. Now, all those memories, the ones I had thought were just him being an annoying pest. They were sweet. I often teased him about it, calling him cheesy. He would just grab me and kiss me until I was breathless. You know, Shay, he said one night, his voice serious for once. We really did meet in a past life. You just don't remember. But that's okay, he whispered, kissing my forehead. I remember enough for both of us. My name is Kieran Sullivan. I had a childhood sweetheart. Her name was Shay. We grew up together. Same kindergarten, same elementary school, same high school. When it came time for college, she got into a prestigious university in the South. Her grades were brilliant. No matter how hard I tried, the best I could do was get into a state school in the same city. Her campus was on the north side, mine on the south. I would ride the bus for hours just to see her, but what were a few hours on a bus compared to seeing her smile? In our junior year, I started seeing her less. I had started my own business. I had to make money. I wanted to propose to her the day we graduated. I wanted to have a small home waiting for us in that city. My luck was good. A major company bought my first project. By the time we graduated, I had enough for a down payment on a house. I bought a ring. I went to her campus to propose. And I watched, helpless, as she was hit by a truck. The world didn't explode. It just stopped. The color bleached out, the sound was sucked into a vacuum, and all that was left was the impossible crimson stain on the pavement and a silence so total it screamed. Even as I watched them cover her with a white sheet, I couldn't believe she was gone. My girl couldn't be gone. I started searching for her, everywhere. My friends said I was crazy. But I knew I wasn't. I was certain that my girl was out there somewhere, waiting for me. I went from city to city, searching. One day, I was hiking in a remote forest when I suddenly felt like I couldn't take another step. I lay down on the forest floor, letting the leaves drift down onto my face. My vision blurred. In the shimmering sunlight, I thought I saw a familiar figure. My girl, reaching out her hand to me. She had come to get me. I smiled. And then I woke up. I was lying in a luxurious king-sized bed. I was me. But I wasn't. My name was Kieran Sullivan, scion of one of the city's most powerful families. I had a mortal enemy named Dane Crawford. My entire purpose in life, it seemed, was to make Dane Crawford's life miserable. If he was unhappy, I was happy. I always felt like I had forgotten something important.